Awesome. Thanks, Eric, and thanks, Adam, and to the Weber River Partnership for having me today. I hope that most of you in this room, I guess in the past year, hopefully have learned about Sentinel landscapes and what a Sentinel landscape is. But that's okay if you haven't. You don't live under a rock or anything. It's a pretty new concept here in Utah, but I'm going to talk about why it has tremendous implications for the Weber River watershed. And hopefully after the next 20 minutes or so, you feel a little bit more excited about it and maybe want to go home and tell your friends and family, or not, that's okay. So first, it's important to start with the basics. What is a Sentinel landscape? And when you hear this term, your brain probably goes a million different ways thinking, well, I've heard the term Sentinel and other concepts. Actually, someone at my table asked me if I'm in the landscape architecture business, which that'd be cool if I was, but I'm not. So what a Sentinel landscape is, this started sort of at the turn of the 20th century when military installations started to see, or I guess when military installations were constructed strategically away from urbanization. And the reason for that, as you might imagine, military installations can make a lot of noise. They fire guns, they drop bombs, they fly planes. It's loud, it's impactful. And so they were strategically constructed where no one would be affected by that. And what happened over time, the human population grew and urbanization began to creep up on these installations. And then additionally, other environmental factors started to become a concern for them, whether it's wildlife migration or weather changes. All of that can impact their operations. And so at the turn of the century, the military decided to begin investing time and resources into protecting installations rather than constructing new installations. And so that begs the question, what does it mean to protect a military installation? So most military installations need a significant land buffer outside of their fence lines. Like I said before, they fire a lot of guns, some of them drop bombs, it's really loud. You don't want to build a house right up to the fence line. And so protecting the land outside of a fence line turns out interests other partners as well. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, NRCS, became interested because a lot of that land in the buffer is farmland, and preserving the livelihoods of our agricultural producers is critical. Additionally, that land can be critical wildlife habitat, and so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Department of the Interior became interested in helping the military with that effort. And so the DoD, or I'm going to call it the Department of War, so DOW, began working with the Fish and Wildlife Service and USDA on putting permanent land protections outside their fence lines. And so additionally, beyond the 5,000-foot buffer of a military installation, you can zoom out and look at an entire geographical area. And that actually has an impact on military operations as well. Again, when we look at wildfire, weather changes, wildlife migration, water scarcity, these are all issues that affect a military installation. And so in all of these realizations, DOW realized that partnership is critical. They can't take on these big problems by themselves, especially because they're limited to what happens within their fence line. And so in 2013, the Department of War, Department of the Interior, and Department of Agriculture signed an official MOU birthing the Sentinel Landscapes Partnership. And so 2013 is not too long ago. It's all pretty new. And all Sentinel landscapes, so I'll show you a slide next where these are. There's currently 19 spread across the country. And all of these Sentinel landscapes are anchored by one or multiple military installations. These are areas where conservation values and working lands have a direct tie to the vitality of a military installation, whether it's open space protection, habitat connectivity, water scarcity issues. But importantly, you need to know that there's no federal oversight here. All of these Sentinel landscapes are locally led and locally driven in all of the states that they're in. And the national partnership exists at a federal scale, but each Sentinel landscape is tailored to a state's unique concerns. I like to think of them as snowflakes. No two snowflakes are the same, and that's the case with Sentinel landscapes as well. So here's the map of where all the Sentinel landscapes currently exist across the country. Since 2013, 19 have been designated. And so interestingly, you'll see them everywhere from Great Salt Lake, where we are, to Guam. Guam in its entirety is a Sentinel landscape, and I think that's pretty cool. Our Sentinel landscape, Great Salt Lake Sentinel landscape, was designated in 2024, and this cycle repeats itself every 2 years. So it's 2026, we're gonna get a new crop of Sentinel landscapes this year, which is pretty exciting. And so the biggest takeaway from this map to keep in mind is that despite the fact that we're here in Utah, we have this incredible national network of resources and partners and expertise that we can bring here to our state to open up doors to collaboration, funding, and additional resources. So quickly, it's important to see the timeline of the federal and state decisions that got us to where we are now. So in 2002, as I mentioned, at the turn of the century, when urban encroachment was becoming a bigger problem, Congress authorized the Department of War to enter into agreements with partners outside the fence line that would help them mitigate this problem. And then in 2013, as mentioned, DOW, DOI, and the USDA signed an MOU to make the Sentinel Landscapes thing official. And then in 2018, the National Defense Authorization Act introduced language that formally recognized the Sentinel Landscapes Partnership in statute, also a really big deal. And then lastly, in 2023, our Utah State Legislature passed House Concurrent Resolution 7, which supported the creation of the Great Salt Lake Sentinel Landscape. So Great Salt Lake Sentinel Landscape is our Sentinel Landscape here in Utah. It was officially born in 2024. Its boundary captures 2.77 million acres across 9 counties, and we have 4 military installations within our boundary. As I said before, you need to have at least 1, and we are lucky enough to have 4. And those are Hill Air Force Base, Camp Williams, Tooele Army Depot, and the Little Mountain Test Facility. And after almost 2 years since our designation, we have over 40 partners on board. And these are folks that you know. They're federal, state agencies, nonprofit, local, private partners that are unique to us in Utah. Additionally, our executive and steering committee are comprised of individuals from these state and federal partners that you all work with on a day-to-day basis. So these are, again, familiar faces of folks that are managing our military installations and natural resources in Utah. And as you can see on the map, there's a red circle. Importantly, the Weber River Watershed makes up a big portion of our Sentinel landscape. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about why this partnership is important to the Weber River Watershed. So like I said, every Sentinel landscape is a snowflake. No 2 Sentinel landscapes are the same, despite the fact that all of us in the West might have similar concerns with water and fire. But we create these goals based on our unique needs and concerns here in Utah. So first and foremost, military installation and community resilience is the heart of what we're doing as a Sentinel landscape and as a partnership. We aim to improve military installation and community resilience by mitigating impacts from compatible development, and we aim to do so in a way that will reinforce agriculture, habitat, and recreational values. Next, our partnership is concerned with catastrophic wildfire and mitigating those devastating effects through fuels mitigation and strategic agency collaboration. And of course, at the top of everyone's mind is always water. Our next goal is to bolster installation resilience through projects that support enhancing water resources and protecting the Great Salt Lake ecosystem. And then lastly, we aim to protect and preserve critical wildlife habitat. And so you're probably thinking, okay, these are big goals. You know, how are you going to make something of those? What are you going to do with those? And so luckily, every Sentinel landscape has a blueprint framework called an implementation plan. And that's something that unites all 19 of us, despite the fact that we're all different. And we are lucky enough to be able to build our implementation plan this year with lovely SWCA in the back. And in that plan, we're going to take these large goals and break them down into actions and strategies. And these are concrete ways that our partnership can come together to work together towards achieving those goals. And so this plan will be written for a 5-year period. And as the coordinator of the partnership, it'll be my job to ensure that the actions we take as a partnership adhere to the plan such that we're moving in a positive direction towards success. And also, the plan is being built by our partnership. So it is a plan for the Sentinel landscape by the Sentinel landscape. I myself am not putting words into people's mouths. This plan is for you. And so at the top of everyone's mind, besides water, is definitely funding. We're all concerned with how are we going to get the money to do this? I mean, these are big goals that we're looking at. And so I'm sad to report that just because we have a Sentinel landscape designation here in Utah, it doesn't come with a handsome funding package. As much as I wish it did, I'd love to be, the one to give money to everyone. I can't exactly do that, but what I can do is ensure that we have priority access to certain funding programs. And so the biggest program that you'll probably hear me talk about a lot if we ever converse is called REPI. And REPI stands for Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration. It's a DOW program that is a large funder of Sentinel landscapes nationwide. And because Utah has a Sentinel landscape, we receive priority access to those funds. And so, I can help you with those applications and those projects, and ultimately we can hopefully bring in some of that nice DOW funding to our state for these natural resource projects. And so additionally, due to the rich network of partners within the Sentinel landscape, the pool for potential matching funds is quite large. Even from organizations that maybe you've never heard of or funding opportunities that you didn't even know existed, this framework and network is a way to bring those to you to help you do the work that you're already doing. And so together we can begin to take smaller pots of funding and piece them together to create a bigger ticket project that can achieve so much more than what we would do on our own. And as I mentioned on the last slide, we have an incredible broad network of Sentinel landscapes across the country. And so that means there's the ability to bring in creative funding from sources communicated through that network. So cool things that are happening in Guam, maybe those could work here in Utah. And the way that we're going to know about that is through this network of partnership that exists on a national scale. And so just a few examples of ways that this funding priority is already working. As I mentioned, REPI is a huge one. And REPI Challenge, which I'm going to talk about some examples in a little bit, is an even bigger one. REPI Challenge is an annual competition where REPI solicits projects for creative and innovative work that will help bolster and enhance military resilience. And so that can be a lot of things, and I'll talk to you a little bit about some examples. Additionally, RARI, so RARI stands for Readiness and Recreation Initiative. That's a program between the National Park Service and Department of War where Land and Water Conservation Fund projects can be matched 100% with REPI dollars if they exist within a Sentinel landscape. And so this is also a shameless plug. If you are applying for an LWCF project and are interested in this, come talk to me. And then additionally, I wanted to mention an agreement that the National Association of Conservation Districts has with the Department of War to provide funds to conservation districts to fund work within a Sentinel landscape. And so that's something we're working on now to bring some of that funding in. But these are just 3 examples of an endless bucket of opportunities. There's really no shortage of creative ways we can bring funding to our state to do this important work. And so critically, we're here at a Weber River event. How does the Great Salt Lake Sentinel landscape impact the Weber River watershed? Weber County is lucky enough to have a large portion of Hill Air Force Base within its boundary. Therefore, the opportunities to partner with the installation are vast, and they're interested in partnering. Hill Air Force Base actually depends on the Weber River for its surface water as delivered through the Weber River Water Conservancy District. Therefore, you can think of the entire health of the watershed as linked to Hill Air Force Base. That's kind of a big deal when you think about the Weber River being linked to military and national security. And I'll talk about a couple of those projects in a second. And then, of course, there's new funding opportunities for the Weber River, whether it's through REPI, through RARI, really, again, any creative and innovative funding we can bring into our Sentinel landscape. And then above all is the alignment of Weber River facing partners with our military partners and other partners that just previously weren't involved in the conversation. We're bringing new people into this conversation to enhance the work that we're already doing, but maybe just need a little bit more funding or a little bit more expertise and ways that we didn't already have that. And so the Sentinel landscape provides a creative platform to be able to do that. So I think maybe some of you are scratching your heads like, okay, these are big, cool ideas, but how is this actually working? It's important to note that the Sentinel landscape isn't here to add an additional workload. Yes, it's another acronym to maybe add to your library of acronyms, but it's really meant to complement all the work that's ongoing and the work that you're already doing. Again, by bringing in additional partners that you don't typically work with, or additional funding, or maybe you needed an extra couple thousand to get your project across the finish line. It's there as a catalyst to help enhance the work already underway. So I want to show you some examples of how this is working. So first and foremost is the Hill Air Force Base Water Resilience Study. So in fiscal year 2024, Hill Air Force Base, through their partners at the Compatible Lands Foundation, received a REPI Challenge Award to do a water resilience study. And when I came on in 2024, they approached me and said, hey, we have this money to do something with water. Do you know people that work in the water world? And I said, yes, I sure do. And so I began talking with the Division of Water Resources in the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's Office to basically inform them about this funding and understand how we could best spend it without duplicating efforts. I didn't want to step on any toes. I wanted this to really help enhance, again, the work that's already being done. And so a year later, with matching funds from the Department of Veterans and Military Affairs, we kicked off this study with Hanson, Allen, and Luce. We've been working closely with the Weber River Basin Water Conservancy District, the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's Office, Division of Water Resources, through this initial study, which aims to quantify ground and surface water to determine methods for Hill Air Force Base to ensure their water security in perpetuity. So phase 2 of the project is centered around future project ideas, and that's where this might benefit many of the partners in this room, because these project ideas are going to be focused on things like riparian restoration and groundwater recharge. And because it's now linked to the military, we have this potential ability to bring in DOW funds to help. And so this project will be completed in 2027. And so also we have 2 fiscal year 2026 REPI Challenge proposals that are still cooking in the kitchen. We're hopefully going to receive funding announcements later this month, but I just wanted to quickly share what they are as examples of how the Sentinel landscape works. And so first is the Utah Landowner Conservation Resource. This is going to be a comprehensive centralized resource for producers and landowners in Utah that'll be hosted by the Utah Association of Conservation Districts and the research performed by Utah State University. And so the goal with this is to create a one-stop shop for landowners, either pre or post-conservation easement, who want to know, what do I do with my land? Who do I talk to? What options are available? It'll be an easy way to either help with management, restoration, public access, succession planning. It'll include the whole gambit. And I think it'd be also great to include information on the virtual livestock fencing, just as an example of we can include everything on there. And additionally, because military readiness is a critical nexus for REPI Challenge, all of these resources that we're going to list in this resource will be compatible with the military mission, and it'll thereby help prevent incompatible development around Camp Williams and Hill Air Force Base while supporting other conservation efforts. And so importantly, I also just want to mention that everything we'll be listing on there for landowners is entirely voluntary. None of the Sentinel landscape and none of the things we list are mandatory. It really involves willing landowners that want to be a part of this conversation. And so there's no forceful nature to any of it, and just something to remember. And second is the Upper Weber Watershed Restoration Project. So this is a project with the Forest Service, World Resources Institute, Summit County, and Forestry, Fire, and State Lands to perform wildfire mitigation treatments on about 1,400 acres of Forest Service land in the headwaters of the Weber. And the big goal there is to safeguard water supplies and water quality coming down the Weber for downstream beneficiaries like Hill Air Force Base, and of course, getting water to Great Salt Lake. By improving wildfire risk and improving water quality and quantity, we become resilient in the event that a catastrophic wildfire rips through the landscape, which, as we know, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And of course, to ensure the operational viability and mission continuity for Hill Air Force Base. And so these REPI Challenge projects, they come about every year, this opportunity. And so we're always cooking up new ideas, and there's a lot we can do with it. So again, come talk to me. I'm always interested in learning about your ideas. And so lastly, I just wanted to talk about conservation easements. I'm sure most of you in this room already know what they are, so I'm not going to tell you what they are. But conservation easements are our biggest tool for protection in perpetuity. And as you can see on this slightly blurry Google Earth screenshot, that area just south of Hill Air Force Base is the southern terminus of their runway. And that's actually a REPI project area that they call Accident Potential Zone 1. And the reason it's called that, as you might imagine, there's a lot of jets and planes taking off and landing on that runway, and there's a lot of accident potential there, and there actually has been accidents in that area. And so maintaining that piece of open space is critical, both for the community and for Hill Air Force Base. And so Hill Air Force Base has been working closely with the Compatible Lands Foundation and REPI to work with willing landowners in this area to place conservation easements on their land to protect this space in perpetuity. As you might imagine, it might be difficult to land a plane if there's a Walmart right below you, nor do you want to crash into a Walmart. That's going to be a problem for the folks buying groceries, etc. And so in the last year, we've successfully finalized 2 of these conservation easement transactions, and we have more in the queue. And again, just to reemphasize, all of these individuals that Hill Air Force Base and Compatible Lands are working with are willing landowners. They want to be a part of this because it's important. And so lastly, I guess the biggest takeaway of all of this, if you had to go home and tell your friends and family one thing that you learned today, it's that partnership is critical. The Great Salt Lake Sentinel Landscape can help the work that's already underway by bringing in new partners and resources. It's there to fill in gaps, make new connections, and we always do better by working together. And there's a lot we can do with water, agriculture, wildlife, and especially in the Weber River watershed, because as I mentioned, the Weber River is important to our mission. And there's no shortage of work between protecting our military installations, protecting our natural resources and communities. And on top of that, you can also think of the work that you do as has another layer of importance. It's now linked to national security. And so if that's something you want to go home and tell your kids, I think that's pretty cool, that now the protection of the Weber River and the Weber River watershed is linked to national security. Just let that sink in for a second. Pretty cool. And so again, thank you to the Weber River Partnership for giving me some time to come talk to you guys today and educate you about this incredible partnership we have. I hope you are feeling a little more confident about what it is and also what it isn't. And there's a QR code to our website as well, which is the national website, and you can poke around and look at all the other 18 Sentinel landscapes and see all the amazing work that they've done. So again, thank you, and happy to take questions.
Thanks. Any questions? What is the Sentinel landscape? We got that answered? Okay.
Speechless.
Speechless. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.